Welcome back to Investing with Confidence. I am your host, Joshua David, and we are not sweating to the oldies. Al, do you remember we used to play different types of music at the beginning of each segment?
We did. Actually, I like that.
Play some Dolly Parton or some, what was that song with the bass harmonica?
Oh, you always ask me.
Sanford and Son. That's what it was.
No, that's right. Yeah.
Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast wherever you listen to podcasts and on YouTube. So, Al, as we get into this final segment, we covered a lot of different topics. We've covered how the markets work, which is based off of supply and demand.
Right.
We've talked about some of those assets that the smart money is using to create income, which would be the futures market, the Forex market, which allows leverage. The options market also allows leverage, but it's not 24 hours. Futures and Forex are open around the clock.
Right.
Gives the average investor more opportunity to trade and invest. We've also covered retirement, but we haven't covered enough the fees that come along with 401ks and IRAs. Now, we're not saying that 401ks and IRAs are a bad thing. They've actually been very good. They've helped people save, but they're still not getting people there to that pathway,
Sure.
to the end of the pathway, I should say, to retirement because of those fees. Why are fees so expensive in retirement accounts? But what are some things us as the average investor can potentially do to minimize those fees?
Yeah, I think most people look at. I think they assume that the fees are going to be maybe around 1 or 2%, and they're okay with that because someone's got to get paid to put that portfolio together. Actually, you're putting it together, but they're providing it for you. But when you think about it, one of the greatest things that we have going for us is compounding. Every dollar that you can put to work for you now will create additional dollars. It will create additional dollars. There's also negative compounding. Every dollar that's taken away is no longer there providing additional dollars, which are producing additional dollars. So the impact of even 2% can be huge. It can cost you 40, 50% of what you could have in retirement. And just a simple example, I think I've used this before. If you took $100,000 and you put it in the market for 30 years at 7%, at the end of 30 years with zero fees, you'd end up with about $761,000. With a 2% fee, now that money's taken away from you. It's no longer compounding you. Now you end up with $432,000. You have lost $329,000 with just 2%. Is 2% high? Is it low? Is it average? Well, when you look at
it's low.
People think it's low, and the truth is it's not. When you look at the all-in cost of mutual funds, the typical mutual fund, it can be closer to 4%. And then you have a fee charged by the plan sponsor, the broker, for example, a financial advisor. So those fees can be maybe 4 or 5%. It's possible, but even at 2%, if 40 or 50% can be taken away from you, think of the impact of higher fees. You've got not just the 12B1 fees. You've got management fees, legal fees, administrative fees, soft dollar fees, revenue sharing fees. It can be maybe 15, 17 different fees within a 401k plan, all of which are detrimental to you. And you can eliminate those by having a self-directed plan. Now, you've also mentioned a couple of things I think are important. You mentioned rules-based. One of the biggest dangers or enemies to you as a trader or investor is yourself. And it's because of the emotions that you have as a human being. That's all of us, even Josh and myself. If we don't follow the rules that are part of the strategy that we use, our thinking, our gut, our brain will start to take over and we'll make bad decisions. So the way you get around that is to have a strategy that includes a set of rules that you follow. It's a step-by-step process that you follow for every trade or every investment. And as much as possible, that takes your thinking out of it. That's part of a plan. Everybody should have a plan, whether you are just investing for income now or whether you are in retirement. But the number one thing, people will put a portfolio together for their retirement, but the one thing that's missing is protecting that portfolio. How is your portfolio protected? For most of you, the broker has told you that you're diversified, and that's going to provide protection. Diversification will not eliminate loss. It might mitigate the total amount, but being diversified is not the best way to protect what you have. We have strategies that we show you that are risk management, the capital preservation strategies.
You're right. I mean, that's what we always talk about. Protecting your capital, that's the most important piece, because if you don't protect it, it's very hard to grow. So, Al, with these investing classes that you teach here at the Academy, you talk about, I guess, protecting that, how to potentially put insurance on your
Right.
portfolio, like you were talking about in the third segment. There's just opportunities that so many people are missing out on. And when you're talking about, those fees and everything, I mean, think of it this way: I got $100,000 sitting in the middle of this desk. It's in between me and Al, and I'm going to say, you know what? Why don't you manage that for me, Al? But you're only going to charge me a 2% fee. Doesn't sound like much, but does it? But what's 2% of $100,000? That's $2,000. Okay, well,
That's every year.
every year, add on 10 years to that.
Mm-hmm.
That's $20,000 in fees that I would be missing out on. That's why it's so important to take control of your assets, eliminate those fees, but you got to learn the skills to do that.
Yeah, and that 20,000, by the way, is no longer there growing for you. So it's worse than just 20,000 being taken away.
Yeah, it's that negative compounding effect.
Right.
So hopefully that visual made some sense for people to understand that those fees add up to be a lot over the course of 5, 10, 15 years. So a lot of people, Al, just don't know how to get started.
Right.
They don't know. Okay, they understand, yes, there's fees. And they say, yeah, I know there's fees. I just don't know what to do. How does somebody get started, let's say, directing their portfolio, or even just starting an account to start trading and investing in?
Well, you have actually hit on one way to start, and that's to come into one of these free classes. And the goal in these free classes is, and we can't teach you to be an expert trader in a couple of hours, but the goal there is to give you enough information about how the markets work, how we approach them, so you can make a decision as to whether this is something you think is right for you or not. And it's an important thing to find out. If it's not the right thing for you, then you need to find a different path to follow. If it is the right thing, then identify the right path for you to follow based on you specifically. That's part of the plan that should be put together for you. And a lot of the people that we see coming into these classes now, Josh, have an understanding of two things. Number one, they understand they don't have enough money to get them through retirement. And number two, they know they don't have enough time, because time is a decaying asset. And that's the real critical thing. As we get into our 60s and 70s, the amount of time we have left to recuperate something or to get where we think we should be and we're not, it diminishes. So, but that doesn't mean that there's no hope there. There are strategies that you can use that will increase that rate of return. But it gets down to education. It's the knowledge of not only how the markets work, but how these different assets work in different market conditions. It's learning, and that's what we do. We are financial educators. We have the ability to teach you how to understand and utilize the futures market, the foreign exchange market, the options market. You don't have to go to different locations to get information on those. We help you put together a path for you that includes the assets that might be most beneficial and get you to where you want to go in the most effective way.
Yeah, you mentioned, a lot of people say, oh, I don't have enough time. Time is a decaying asset. But think about this. If you're 40, let's just say you're 50, you do have enough time. You're still only you're at halftime right now of your life. You have the time to do things, but it takes a little bit of action. And Al, it's getting close to the end of the show. And a lot of people are seeing, I guess, some of the benefits that potentially could happen by lowering fees in retirement accounts or even any type of account. But also they're missing out on a lot of opportunity.
Right.
And these opportunities with these financial markets, they're every day. I mean, the market is always moving, but you got to understand learning some knowledge, and then you have to learn the skill, and that's your execution. Al, you always have some great words of wisdom every single week, and I don't know how you come up with them, but I think they've inspired a lot of people to get started and getting into the game of the financial markets. Let's hear them today.
Well, I think it's good to start out by asking yourself this, how are things going for you now? Are you where you thought you'd be or where you want to be? And is your plan just simply to think about it and maybe do something later? Is that your plan because you don't know what to do to change things? Well, if there was a way to help you achieve your short-term income goals and your long-term wealth goals, wouldn't it be worth taking action to get that help now? And at OTA, our goal is to empower people to achieve what we call your why. What's your goals? What your aspirations are. Remember, it doesn't take courage to do nothing and stay where you are. It takes courage to make a change.
And that change, it's sometimes doing things differently. Same time, same place next week. Until then, retire young, my friends.